Setting that this is a setting that is in Wildflower that is fit to cultivate a lot of what I say and share with you today. Some 13 years ago, before I had Jasmine, my wife was pregnant with Jasmine, I was asked by a friend how I thought I would parent. I did not respond immediately, had to reflect on that a bit. I have ideas. And as a person in my position, a therapist, I'm always cautious, or I try to be cautious, not always cautious, but try to be. To take consideration what I'm thinking. So I couldn't respond. I have expectations just like any other parents. For example, I would hope, because I practiced mindfulness back then, compassion would be something, a true and significant value that she would instill. I considered it, I did not express it. Part reason is because it is in fact just that, an expectation. It is projected from me. In any time, and we will discuss this in greater detail, we have an expectation on our children. What often follows is a demand. So that frightens me a lot of times when I take into consideration what that means. And I will explain that as well. At the time, I was familiar with Diana Baumrein's style of parenting, and you may be familiar with it also, the authoritarian, authoritative, and laissez-faire. I've not been quite versed yet in conscious parenting. That came later. But when I discovered it, it resonated very well with me, because there's an aspect, a component of conscious parenting that requires contemplation. So it's also referred to as contemplative parenting. And part of that contemplation, or process of that contemplation, as a conscious parent, what is also required is how you perceive or see yourself. So you do an investigation as a conscious parent, constantly scrutinizing and examining who you are and what you are. So the process itself wraps around the idea. I think Wildflower follows this kind of path where you're questioning yourself. To some degree, we all do so, to try to define who am I as a person. So in conscious parenting, it takes the same line of thinking. Who am I? What am I as a parent? Now, in conscious parenting, I dare say 98% of it has to do with understanding how you parent. So essentially it's the parent parenting themselves. Less the child, more self. So that evolution is essential for personal development and growth, not only as a person. When I think in terms of parent, there are aspects of our intelligences that must evolve through time in order to optimize our child's chances of success. So for instance, emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, social intelligence, intellectual humility intelligence, and so on. I will discuss all of that later on. It is significant to be aware of. Now, going back to what I said, conscious parenting appealed to me because it required an aspect of contemplation, of reflection, introspection. And it's really, if you can be conscious, you're trying to be conscious of everything that you're projecting, that comes, that arises, that stirs within you, that being your thoughts, thinking, cognition, and your emotions. Also sensations. So I may be inclined, for example, to recognize and notice the feeling of coolness as I wave my hands and I speak to you. So I may be aware of those things. So there's an aspect of consciousness, and that's in some ways, I think, a tricky concept, at least to define. So then that's a good segue to this. As practical, an application of consciousness can be, it would be defined by your capacity to pay attention, to notice, to observe. As practical, an application that you can find to define what consciousness is, it starts with paying attention, notice. And we all have this capacity. Sometimes, yes. More often than not, we are distracted, whether from external stimuli or internal. We have thoughts, ideas, fantasies just floating around. So paying attention in conscious parenting is two parts. One, what is it that you are attending to within yourself? That's where it really starts. In paying attention in regards to your children, second part is what are they feeling, or what are they thinking, or what are they doing? But then you go back to paying attention to yourself in relation to all of that. That is conscious parenting. It's about full personal responsibility for self as a parent to your child or children. That's our life's work and task as a parent. In regards to inner work, doing our inner work, it is very crucial that we evolve over time as a parent. And we do so through the process of introspection, but recognizing when we fail as well. Out of that, wisdom arises. So there's a lot of inner work and investigation. When I am sitting, I see mostly children. I'm a therapist that sees mostly children. So about 70% of my clients are children and adolescents. And the process for me begins the moment I greet them out in the waiting area. It is very significant if you can sustain the kind of attention that is colored by a quiet focus, where you're just simply attending to the child, that allows the child to flourish. In regards to introspection, reflection, and intention, that's for us, that's for the parent. Working with parents too, it's very difficult to be critical, because many parents that come to me carry a whole lot of history. And those history, that history, whatever that may be, we'll discuss more of that later, defines how they will parent. we have to be vigilant, and if we're willing and courageous to examine and question. Sometimes what we do may feel right, is not. Sometimes what our parents did for us, although we grew up to be okay, may not be okay for our kids. A more extreme example, I'll give you an example of a client. It wasn't a client, actually. DFS had called me some time ago and asked me if I could interview a father who was, at the time, I had to go to DFS and interview that father. And, the father's form of discipline is spanking. So unfortunately, when he did so, he left bruises. And it was noticed at school. And in talking to him, he indicated that he spanks because it works. And then further indicated that, look how I turned out. I'm perfectly fine. I'm just trying to teach my kid too. So the intention was there, as you see, nothing malicious. And that's why I have to be gentle a lot of time with parents, because they come from a place that many of these parents are not aware of. And the influence is powerful. It's been embedded so deeply, a lot of what they know about parenting or what they've learned in the past. And we all do that to some degree. I teach mindfulness and meditation, conscious parenting. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I still grimace when Jasmine, my daughter, does something disapproving. I still grimace. But I'm also quick to, at least I try to be aware what that all means. So I will assess my grimace or grimacing. And then when I do so, it leads back to this trail that makes sense about my history. So take the time to examine the relationship. So what I mean by this is, I think it would be easy, I think we all know this, or at least we're aware of this, to displace our own sorrow and suffering onto our children, not knowing the impact, and it disguises itself as parenting, like spanking. We are too readily to respond and think that this is effective. And it is to a degree, because it suppresses the child. And then our response to that consequence is, you see, it works. What is terrifying to me is the thing that it produces, what spanking does. And I am seeing parents now who still spank their children despite seeing me. The way of the wise, that is conscious parenting, it goes back again, and I will reiterate this 1,000 times over, whether it's paying attention, being cognizant, being aware, being conscious. That's all is what defined conscious parenting. The embodiment of conscious parenting is that capacity, paying attention, noticing. The significance of that, as I stated earlier, is seen in the child and how they respond to being acknowledged and noticed. Have you ever been on your cell phone and your child seeking your attention? What is that like for the child? More
Frustrating.
frustrating for the child? How do you know?
Because I've done it to her.
And what does she do or he do?
They just get more and more frustrated. It probably hurts their feelings that I can't look up from what I'm doing. Although my kids have gotten better, my daughter uses my own words against me and says, "The way a person knows you're listening is when you look at them in the eyes, Mom."
That's horrifying what you're doing. Complete annihilation of that child's spirit. I'm being melodramatic, but am I? So just be aware. Yes. I bring that up because the biggest complaint, one of the biggest complaints, and I often ask when I work with kids to provide me a list of things that your parents do that irritate you, and that just happens to be on the list. They're on the phone all the time. With dads, a lot too, is he's on his game all the time. I want you to take consideration of that. Let me think. Oh, I could be so sarcastic and say, well, then why did you have kids? No, that's so. But again, I have to be, as I say, forgiving and compassionate in return, right? And listening as a way of life. So my practice, and I started this practice in '98, meditation, and I've had teachers who have helped me become better at that. And I had a teacher who said to me one time, I talk too much. I didn't think so, but I guess I did. And he indicated to me that from now on my practice will be compassion for the rest of my life. And I can start by listening. So I think it's significant, and I'm hoping to remind us of that over and over again, the importance of listening to the point where it becomes a mantra. Every time you wake up first thing in the morning, you're like, listen. Right, and before bed, listen as you fade. If you can embody that, your children will be grateful, and they will return the favor in the way that they will become also a conscious entity in their own right, because you are demonstrating to them what attention looks like, what awareness looks like. There are three ways we typically teach our children. The first is explanation. We're really good at that. We talk. Yeah. No, you, why did you? No. The other way is demonstration. I do that. I did that a lot earlier on when Jasmine was little. Once upon a time, we had this fish tank. Jasmine was just about 5 years old at the time. She went up to that fish tank. It was just new. We just got it that day. And she was like, hey, fishy. The fish. So I walked over there. What do you suppose I did? As a conscious parent, I know you're conscious too, right? To a certain degree, we're on that spectrum. Okay, maybe not. Not even, right? Okay, well, I walked over there. I sat next to her, looked at her, smiled, and I took my fingers and I ran my hand down the fish tank like so. And of course, children are, as they typically are, hypersensitive and hyper-aware. A week after that, or maybe 2 weeks after that, we went to Olay's Pizza. Is it Olay's Pizza? Right now? They have a gigantic fish tank. They sat us right next to a table right next to that fish tank, the other side of the fish tank. I'm looking at the menu, I turn around and I see this. Jasmine. See that? So, displaying empathy and compassion and doing so by example. Children are learning, especially the first 4 years of life, the first 2,000 or so days are crucial due to the sensitive, critical periods. They're biologically built to mimic you. They want to be you. I want to be like daddy or mommy when I grow up, right? And then it changes, because after that you suck. Yeah. Especially around 10 or 12, or 10, 11, 12, you matter less. But that's okay too. You still matter. You still matter. So about that period, they're watching, observing, as you probably know already, and they're learning. They'll even use your language. I have a kid that comes in and curses like a sailor. Like, what the heck? What the hell? I'm thinking to myself, right? So does Dad too. After his session, right? I see him. That's their maybe love communication. Love language, they call it. You have to be mindful what that even means, what that means for yourself, your love language, and how it impacts your children, right? Like fathers maybe tend not to be as physically affectionate, and some mothers may tend not to be. Just keeping that in mind. And part of that keeping in mind is recognizing what their love language is, what works for them. And some kids are like, some of your kids come up to me and just just hug me without even thinking, right? That's their love language. And then, of course, I hug back. Mindful, gentle. Teach by example. So you got that explanation I was talking to you about that you all probably experts on, right? I don't have to talk to your children or talk at your children, should I say? All right? So be mindful of that. And then there's demonstration. And then there's emulation. That's where you set an example. So when I considered what my friend said 13 years ago when she asked me, how do you think you would parent? Compassion came to mind. So I knew that it was an important value to teach myself. I want that for Jasmine. Who wants their child to be a bully? Can you raise your hand? You, Mary? Okay. That's so you, Mary. I see you. Yeah. So if you're going to consider certain implicit values that you deem important, like human values, okay? So my child needs to make straight A's. I don't consider that a value. I think that's expectation and demand that could create issues and problems. I have an adolescent. She got an A-, and her mother called me and asked if I could see her. She's in distress. So she's always had A's. She's in high school, so she's always had A's. So she came in so we can process her A-. So you have to be careful. This is the part of the investigation I'm talking about. You're constantly scrutinizing yourself. Not criticizing, scrutinizing. You're going to criticize yourself. That's going to happen because parents only have two emotions when they have kids, love and guilt. So it's going to happen.
I'm so sorry.
It's a bell of mindfulness, yes? Just notice, be aware how you respond and react to those things. Notice. Was at the movies one week, a phone goes off, and it made me smile. So these sort of things happen, that occurs, they're bells of mindfulness. Listen, yeah, see? Miss Ellen's going to take care of that, right? Because it's a disruption. But it becomes a bell of mindfulness for yourself. You grow all the more wiser, and you develop this response within yourself that is replete with a kind of patience and understanding and wisdom. You so much desire for your kids. You start with yourself. So listen. Oh, there you go. Listening matters, right? If anything that matters, listening. When I listen to a child, I really listen to the child. I may make eye contact. I may just look down because I want to hear. I really want to hear what this child says. Because children are always telling a story, listen. Children are always telling a story, and there's always a story behind the story as well. I learned in my graduate class that is considered the most effective form of communication. The most effective form of communication. And it is probably the greatest hint or what is the word for the greatest signal of the display of compassion. When you can, as I said, create a quiet focus within yourself in the context of listening or observing your children, you are literally displaying a form of compassion. And compassion, as you know, cannot just be an explanation, yes? It cannot be a declaration. It needs to be a practice. And that practice begins with you. And listen. So teaching the value of respect, I think most of us, and I ask parents this, that's why I know that probably most parents want this from their children, respect. Yeah? And empathy. Well, you do that through listening. The first time I taught Jasmine respect when she was just an infant, I got to go into she was in like a kind of, what do you call it, an incubator? Or is that what? She was little, it's at 4 pounds. So and I tried to make eye contact with her, and with all due respect, I was present right there. When she was 2, I asked her if it was okay I can enter her room. May I enter your room, please? I need to get something. And at 2 years old, every kid would say, yes, Daddy, yes. So right off, very early on, throughout that time, and in therapy session, just the same, demonstrate just the same, displaying that kind of respect we so desire so much for our children. It is learned much quicker if you're present, if you're there, demonstrating respect. Demonstrating and also emulating respect. And the child sees that, soaks that in, and every new experience, what you see, new neuronal connection is made. In every day of their life, up to about 18, you continue to demonstrate compassion and empathy. It is consolidated because that's all they know and all they see. Jasmine, to this day, will not enter our bedroom without asking for permission. I never told her that she could not. She will not enter. I never told her she could not enter our room without permission, because it's all she knows. It's all she knows. Okay? Spend the time with them. There are two versions of this. Sometimes I just heard from an adolescent I saw this week that she and her mom spent time watching a movie. So that's a form, a type of a quality of time spent. And then there is the time when you are truly present. You are there and the child speaking and sharing all sorts of goodies, things that are coming from their mind, that they're thinking. And you're present to that. And you're just listening. And you listen. And you listen. A couple of nights ago, Jasmine came to me, and my daughter came to me at 9 o'clock in the evening. And she talked to talk. It was 11 o'clock. It was 11 o'clock before I knew it. Way past her bedtime. Yeah, but I was there. Everything she said was important to me. Everything she offered, every word was a gift. When I listen, by the way, when we're having what I refer to as peace talks, which I started when she was about 2. Peace talks where we're face to face and she's just telling me everything and anything about her existence. I'm listening throughout. So she's talking about 80% of the time. No, 95% of the time or so. When I intervene, the moment I get an opportunity, I respond only in the form of a question. What do you mean? Wait, how did that feel? What is that like? Or I will paraphrase. So the 10% of the time I get an opportunity, I will inquire or paraphrase. So you were upset when so-and-so did this. What I do not do is provide advice. So I don't advise dump on children. I know we do. Been therapist for 18 years or so, and parents are constantly giving advice. You know why? Because we have a lot of wisdom, right? And we want to share that with our kids. That's not why. You need to be heard too. Yeah. So looking at that, recognize that verbosity. That's one of 3 things I assess for in parents, by the way, verbosity. Talking too much. It's very detrimental, potentially detrimental to children. For one, you certainly don't want to impose your spirit or your information or yourself onto your child. He or she has their own spirit. Okay? So, I was asked one time, do you believe in God? And my response, do you? To this day, my daughter doesn't know if I believe or not. So spending time, create time if you can. Have peace talks. A parent indicated to me, you know what, I like that idea. I'm going to refer to it as a grace talk. Call it what you will. What's important is that you're present in the moment. Power and influence in a good way. You know we already have leverage over our children because they want to please. They want to please. So you don't have to force anything. If you're having to force anything, then it borders the need and desire to control. And boy, to a degree, we're training our kids to, when they reach age 12, to cause conflict. So let them experience consequences. I think they're having so much fun. Wish I was there. What is it? Our influence can inspire change if the influence is virtuous. Good intentions. And that's what you're doing, by the way, when you're investigating, constantly noticing how you respond to your children, is that you're attempting to locate your intention and go beyond just the mere idea that I want what's best for my children. Because as Safali says, sometimes we do things for our children in the name of love that is horrific. In the name of love, for example, I want my kids to have good grades, the best school, college, family. Oh, in the name of love, right? Their expectations, they may be good intentions, but do they apply? So get to know your kids first. Then when they're 40, 50, then force them to go to school and get good grades, right? Get to know your kids. You don't have much time. Discern the difference between owning a life and loving one. This is hard for me to swallow. This is a tough one, really. I have to remind myself of this, that it's too easy to fall prey to the belief that she is my child, and therefore I get to do whatever I want, or shape her the way I want, or have her perform the way I want her to be. Influence flows out of the relationship itself. If you want to influence your kids and you want to teach them respect, I will refer to respect because that's, I think, at the top of the list, if not the top three, when I ask parents, what are 3 things you hope to instill in your children? And that typically is one of them. Then cultivate first a relationship. They will follow your lead. Your form of discipline, and I think this matters in school, and I see this sometimes, where children at school are disciplined, but yet they still act out. Discipline is only as good as their relationship with you. When you discipline, they probably will listen to you because you're like an ogre standing above them and you can hurt them. But we cannot mistake self-suppression with self-regulation. There's a big difference. They will listen to you. They will adhere to you because they fear you. And you may be inclined to interpret that as, it works. My brand of parenting works. That's why we constantly do a lot of investigation about the way we respond to our children. So influence, as I refer to as, flows out of relationships. Cultivate the relationships. And you will never have to discipline your children. They will do. That's not true. Sometimes you will have to discipline your children. I'm just trying to make a point. I would rather, instead of, for example, putting them in timeout, I know parents do that, and people like myself have recommended that. I am sorry, mistake. I would prefer that you use time in, where you get that opportunity, and the child gets that opportunity to work at this together. Okay? We're learning psychology, new science, relatively speaking, and there's much to learn still. Oh, this page by itself, parenting with humility. This is a form of intelligence. I refer to it as intellectual humility. That is actually a form of intelligence. Boy, do we need a whole lot of this. If we are to ever increase our parental IQ, we start with this. Humility. This means everything. Because in the context of that, what you're capable of in your investigation is you recognize all your foibles. flaws, you recognize that. And you're making flaws, or you're making mistakes all the time. The moment you open your mouth when you're talking to your children, if you really listen, you're like, oh, heck. Did I just say that? So you're constantly making mistakes. This is conscious parenting, not perfect parenting. And, I Google perfect parenting. There's no such concept.
Darn it.
That's how I responded. I needed to know. That way I could save all the suffering. I can just go straight there, be perfect, right? So, recognizing as a humble parent your foibles, your struggles, and your own suffering allows you to be smarter, bigger, stronger, faster. Yeah. So be thankful. Meaning here, not just thankful that my child is healthy, but I'm thankful that I'm dumb. I'm thankful that I have much more to learn. I'm thankful for this opportunity. That's what I mean by this is all in relation to the parent. So this first half, by the way, the second half, I'll talk to you about later on the psychology of children. So this is about just the parents. So being apologetic, 2 parts. 1, it's okay to give yourself permission to let go of your idiocy. It's okay to accept.
I thought I turned it off.
No, please, continue. Yep. To teach yourself to respond with patience and mindfulness. Yeah. You're here to teach me. I got it. Okay, being apologetic. Oh, yes. I'll tell Jasmine a lot of time, my daughter, my bad. So I'll speak the language. With kids in therapy, one time I slept in therapy. And the kids said, Dr. Tran, are you sleeping? I'll admit it, and I'm not going to lie, because I need that trust to still be there. I said, oh, yeah, my bad. All on me, my bad. And he just laughed and smiled. And then we continue. Being self-respectful. Self-respectful. Yeah, something we demand so much on our children to be. What a way to honor ourselves, right? First of all, by giving ourselves permission to let go that we suck as parents, but also demonstrating for ourselves the kind of respect that can foster within ourselves loving kindness. Loving kindness is compassion directed towards self. And besides, I like this. I found this, and I say, oh, it's so true. Humility speaks the truth. Is that not also what we desire for in our children? Right? Truth, in terms of truth, I see it as 2 parts. Its component, honesty, truth, but also reality. What the child sees, in this case, that kid who says, well, you were asleep. Oh, absolutely. But to deny him of that, had I said no, I would have convinced him that he had lived a lie. He was sure he saw me asleep, but then Dr. Tran says no. So it must be something wrong with me. So honesty, it's okay when you're, and they will not already ask you if you are angry or you sad. It's okay to say that, because you're offering one of the greatest gifts that they can be offered, the gift of truth. You want them to see reality as it is, right? And to grow up with, to deny them of that reality, a distorted perspective. Can you imagine the type of relationship they will enter? Misperceive events, situations, and other people. I really believe part reason why 50% of marriages end up in divorce has to do with our inability to detect reality, to be perceptually intelligent, because we were deceived very early on by our parents too. Not their fault, because it was generational. So misperception is referred to as a mental affliction. It's not a mental illness, mental affliction. It is a sickness, equally as debilitating as a mental illness. Think about that for a moment. Deceiving self of reality gets us in trouble, whether it's in relationship or work or whatever. Sometimes ruins our life. Yeah? Arrogance hides it. I need to go on because this is over 60 PowerPoint videos. I know I have 4 sessions to do, and I'm also out of time almost. All right. We'll just finish it off with this, okay? And then we have 3 more sessions. Inquire about the self. Very early on, I asked my daughter a simple question at the end of the month, every month, from 2 to 6 years old. If I could change one thing about myself to make myself a better dad for you, what would or could I change? For 4 years. At the end of the month, I would ask that because I indicated to her, because for this next month, I want to work on that. And for 4 years, she always had something. Darn it. She always had something. Not one time there wasn't anything for me to work on. And most of the time, it was my tone. So I've gotten better. Because I focused on that and worked on that for 4 years. Okay? And that's something you can ask your kids. They'll have something to say if you're willing. Not many parents would do that. It puts them in a position of vulnerability. And that's okay. You can ask yourself that. Inquire within yourself, what could I change? What is it that I can do for this month? Change about myself. That can help me be a better mother or father for my child. And I've asked these type of questions to kids too. Hey, Junior, how can I learn better ways to treat other people? Oh boy, every kid has an answer to that. All right? If you could teach me to be more patient, how would you do so? What would that look like? I ask kids that too. What does patience look like? What does that patient look like in your mom? How about your dad? Oh, Dad's not patient. He gets angry all the time. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, ooh, okay. But what would it look like? I just investigate. If I could be more conscious for you, what would that look like? I use terms like that even with kids who are 3, 4, 5. If I could be more conscious, what would that look like? If you wanted your parent to be more conscious for you, what would that look like? Yeah. Has there ever been a time I made you so upset you were afraid to tell me? I asked, don't bring your kids to me if you don't want to know this, because I will ask them this. Has there ever been a time that your parent made you upset, that you were afraid to tell them? Yeah. If you could rate your parenting skill, I asked that too. Jasmine, if you could rate my parenting skill from 1 to 10, 1 meaning I suck, 10 means I'm the best dad ever. She's at 9 now. Yay!
It depends on their mood sometimes. I was going to say, there's times my kids will say one.
That sucks for you. Sucks. Yeah, you you bring her to me on a good day. Right? Ice cream before therapy session. Yeah. That's so coercive. We're going to talk about coercive parenting on a later date. All right, we're going to end it here. Questions or comments or responses?